Hi, this is Savannah Saunders from The Wonderful World of Dance, and today I am honoured to introduce world-renowned, critically acclaimed choreographer Wayne Eagling, who's the former Royal Ballet Senior Principal Dancer, the celebrated and beloved former Artistic Director of the English National Ballet, and previously Artistic Director of the Dutch National Ballet. Wayne has created an extensive body of choreographic work for top companies around the world, from the Royal Ballet, La Scala, Rome Opera, Hong Kong Ballet, Kremlin Ballet, and of course for the English National and Dutch National Ballets, whilst he was artistic director at the companies. One of Wayne's ballets, Remembrance, recently premiered on YouTube by the New English Ballet Theatre, which is luckily available to watch until the 15th of December. So make sure you add this to your calendar for a bit of Christmas season watching. Hi, Wayne. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, Savannah. Pleasure to see you again.
Oh, lovely again. So we talked about this before, but it would be great to get a bit of an insight into how your lockdown experience was and how you've been dealing with the COVID situation.
Well, I'm fortunate. I have a lovely garden, so that's looking even lovelier with all of the time I spent there. And I have a young son, and I got to spend a lot of time with him and my wife. So it was a kind of a plus situation. I must say I didn't mind it at all. But as I said, I'm very lucky to have that situation. Of course, all the work I was going to do has been postponed.
Yes, especially as we've now just entered here in the UK another round of restrictions. And although we are seeing in this country ballets and dance companies starting to slowly return to the theatres, which is great because they are more in Germany and certainly not in the States as yet. But of course we have swiftly moved into this digital dance stage, yes. I guess. And the premiere of Remembrance having been on YouTube with the New English Ballet Theatre, it's quite interesting that, as you say, these dates that have been postponed have moved things also online. Tell me about Remembrance and how you've been working with the New English Ballet Theatre on this ballet.
Well, Remembrance, Karen Pilkington, who's the wonderful director of the company, invited me to make the work, which was from an original idea by Greg Billingsley, which we adapted to try to make it more relevant to the English or UK audiences by basing it around the life of Marie Romber and her husband, who was called up to the front. And I had previously, they had done a ballet of mine before, so I knew Karen, and I kind of jumped at the chance of doing, an original piece to some beautiful music of Handel, which would not normally be my kind of choice of music.
Yeah, it's a very emotional, but quite a foreboding almost. It's a really interesting piece to revive for this work.
Yes, well, it's an ode for St. Cecilia's Day, and it is a beautiful piece of music. When I first listened to it, I wondered how we were going to work the story into it, but Greg was very good at that, and by the time Greg and Karen and I had gotten our claws into it, I think we found a very good solution for the narrative of the ballet.
And Remembrance, as you mentioned, is based on the life of Marie Romber and Ashley Duke. Tell us a bit about their love story and why you drew upon this for the ballet.
The original concept was for the two main protagonists to be sort of anonymous. So there was a woman and her lover who meet in the dance studio, and he's called up and goes to war. And in the original concept, of course, he was killed in the fighting, never came back. Ashley Dukes, of course, did survive the war, but Marie Rambert was around at at that particular time, and her story is I think sort of like one of the principal founders of British dance. So the link to her and the First World War and her and British dance, and the story was perhaps a little bit less heartbreaking because of not having the actual loss. But in the end, I don't think that really matters, because the rest of the ballet sort of portrays the loss felt by the people the people left behind. That's really what we were trying to get. How terrible it was to be sitting at home wondering whether your loved one was alive or dead.
It tells beautifully through this narrative work, this universal story of love and separation during the times of war. And I love that you've drawn upon Marie Rambert, as you mentioned, who founded one of the oldest dance company in the UK, which is still, for listeners around the world, it still is in existence, Rambert. Tell me about working with the company, New English Ballet Theatre. How did you rehearse with them this work, and when did that take place, given sort of where we are in COVID land?
The concept of New English Ballet Theatre is to give dancers who are not working a chance of gaining experience and getting some money. And each year, the company auditions a group of about 12 to 14 dancers and puts on original choreography by different choreographers, mostly I would say new and up and coming. I'm one of the older ones, but it's a lovely concept to do new work and to take it to theaters, to smaller theaters where the larger companies like the Royal Ballet or English National Ballet would not go. And so, once you audition the dancers, then you become a very close knit group. I went to the auditions and helped choose the dancers, and you really get to know people. They range from 19 years old, straight from school, never having danced, to Alessia, who was the lead dancer, who'd done she was older and had a lot of experience. So it was a great mixture of experience and youth and but mostly enthusiasm, I would say. They were all just so happy to be able to work and have a job and do something.
They must have felt quite privileged to be working with you on one of your original ballets. What did they share with you about their experience of being able to learn your work and to be able to rehearse with you and to work with you?
Well, I'm not so sure how many of them probably had never seen me dance and didn't know much of my choreography, as is the way of young dancers today, The first thing I did say to them was, the way I like to work is I have an idea of what I want to do, but I don't. I know what I want to do sort of with the music, but I don't. And I say, please, you've got to be part of the choreographic makeup. I want you to, I'm going to start you, and then can you carry on? And it's a little bit like, I learned that from Kenneth MacMillan. That's the way he would work. He would come in and he'd have an idea, and then he'd say, I'd like you to start this. Can you do an arabesque? And then you would carry on. He'd go, I like that, or I don't like that. Young dancers today are a bit nervous. They sort of wait for you to do every step. Now, some choreographers like that, but I found it didn't take long for them to be whizzing away and choreographing the whole ballet for me. It was really enjoyable, and I must say, they all had the most fantastic work ethic, and just because they were just so happy to be part of something and not sitting at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, during these times, it's great to have had that experience and then to be able to see it being premiered on YouTube, which, as you say, for many young dancers, this is, quite an expected norm. I think as we're moving through this time, all the dance is very much moving into digital. But you mentioned there Kenneth MacMillan. So, this immediately takes us to your own career. You danced with the Royal Ballet for 22 years, and you were a bit of a favourite, I understand, of Kenneth, and he sort of, selected you. Tell me about your, joining the company as a young dancer at the beginning of your career and what it felt like at that time for you.
When I joined the company, the artistic director was Frederick Ashton, and then Kenneth took over from Fred, and for some reason, he took a shine to me, and one of the first things I did was walked into Baron's Court to the studio, and I saw my name up to learn Romeo, and I thought, oh my God, so he did like me. And then the first ballet he did when he was officially director of the Royal Ballet was a piece called Triad, which was created for Anthony Dowell, Antoinette Sibley, myself, the three leading characters. So, I was very lucky to be able to work with somebody as genius like Kenneth, and then later on my career to be able to, but much less to work with Frederick Ashton. But I think Kenneth was really the person who was the most influence on me as a dancer, as a dancer that was not necessarily the typical prince. I like the more human roles, like Romeo, like Prince Rudolf, and things like that. I was less happy being a Siegfried.
Wanted something with a little bit more drama, a little bit more character.
Well, yes, more human,
More human.
And so I was very lucky that. In that point in my career, that Kenneth was director, and of course I worked with Norman Morris and Anthony Dowell as director. So I spent my entire career at the Royal Ballet, which had the most fantastic repertory, and I never felt the urge to go and join another company. And
what were some of your some of the memories or the moments that you had working with Kenneth MacMillan in the studio? Do you think about something that was, sort of sits in your memory from those times?
He did give you freedom, even if you were, for instance, when he was choreographing Manon, I was the second cast to Anthony Dowell, but I would be. Jennifer Penny and I would be in the back and fiddling around there. And he took an interest in what we were doing as well as what Anthony and Antoinette were doing. When we did Triad, I had a very bad foot. And he had consulted the doctor that was looking after me. So the doctor said, make sure he doesn't do anything on his right foot. So I spent a lot of time. Kenneth spent a lot of time trying to follow the doctor's directions.
Oh, goodness.
But I was fortunate. I danced, so many of Kenneth's wonderful ballets, and of course, what else he did. He brought in Jerome Robbins and really, uh, he expanded the look of the Royal Ballet, which a lot of people don't give him credit for, I think. But lucky for me and lucky for all of us who were there at the time.
You were certainly at the Royal Ballet at a time where we, a bit younger, we sort of look back and think, this is quite a magical time for the company, as you say, with, Frederick, Ashton, and then you've got Kenneth MacMillan, and you've so many greats that you danced with, who have gone on to become, the ballet greats of our time.
Yeah.
And you created a number of roles working with MacMillan. From your perspective, what did it feel like to be in the company? Did you sort of look around and think, this is quite a special time? Or was it just your job? Was that just your life?
A lot of people say, oh, it must have been fantastic, that time that everything was happening, but it just felt normal. And people, when I joined in 1969, people said, oh, you missed all the great years, before. I think we were very lucky with having both Kenneth and Fred there as choreographers, but it didn't feel like it was abnormal, just seemed this is the way it is. And I guess I don't think we took it for granted, but it was, it was always an excitement when it was announced that Kenneth was going to create a new ballet. He was going to do Meyerling, or just Fred would come up and do a. Well, at that point he was just doing one-act ballets and things, but but it was a buzz. Jerry Robbins is coming and Glenn Tetley is coming, and so it was. But it didn't seem historic.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's what dancers, younger dancers say to me. Oh, it was the best time. But I guess people will say to them, oh, you were so lucky to be working. It was the best of your time.
There is something magical about you saying, oh, Fred. In such a warm way, in such a friendly way. When of course, we're talking about Sir Frederick Ashton here, but that is, it is magical for us to hear that and to be able to imagine that closeness and to be able to imagine that time within the company and all working together.
They could be difficult, because everybody that has that pressure of creation, sitting in front of a studio full of people going, okay, genius, show us what you've got. So there were lots of stressful times as well. But, Fred was Fred and Kenneth was Kenneth. And Madam was always Madam. Dame Ninette. It just seemed normal. When I was in the Royal Ballet School, Ninette de Valois taught class every Wednesday, boys and graduates class. And I used to get on the bus in Castleknock, and she'd be on the bus going from Barnes.
You can almost not imagine it, and yet it sounds so sentimentally beautiful. What was she like as your teacher?
She was very, very tough on the girls, and she loved us boys. We got away with a lot more than the girls did.
Well, sounds like you may have got a slightly easier ride then.
Yes, absolutely. She was very tough, and I always remember that even all the people that were dancers in the company when she was director, who were kind of directing us, Michael Soames and Gerd Larson, they were all, I must say, they had a very healthy respect for Madam. probably much more than us boys in her graduate class. You know, they were a bit terrified. If Madam said that's a glass of red wine and it was white, you'd go, yeah, that's red.
Well, that's I'm not surprised. I think we all know the rigors of ballet training. And throughout your time, those 22 years with the company, the company obviously went through a couple of different directors, as you have mentioned, and performing new ballets. What was it like for you rising through the ranks of the company? Because you were a senior principal dancer, which is a role which the company doesn't currently have, which you actually came to quite early in your career. What did it feel like for you going through the ranks of the company?
My first year I was a spear carrier and Toad in Sleeping Beauty and all the usual quarter ballet stuff. And then I must say my career took off really when Kenneth came, and his concept was to really give the younger dancers a chance. Fred was a little bit, you let people take their turn, and so the younger dancers didn't get quite so much, not exclusively, but Kenneth really let the younger dancers go. And I had a parallel career with David Ashmole, and we both went up the ranks fairly quickly, to the surprise of some of the other dancers in the company. So I became a principal dancer quite quickly. I was in that kind of group of people. It was David Wall, Anthony Dowell, the two main stars, and of course Nureyev was always around. So even though I was a senior principal, I was still in that little pecking order. Rudolf had his shows, David had his shows, Anthony had his shows, I got mine, David Ashmole got his, and the younger dancers started coming up. People like I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah. So you just threw in there Rudolf. Yeah. What was it like being at the company at the time where he was also at the company? As you say, you've got your pecking order, but that was quite the time for the company.
Well, Rudolf was a guest artist, but he appeared so much with us. Also we did his Bayadere and his Nutcracker. He spent more time with the Royal Ballet than any other company. And, I became great friends with Rudolf. If I was in New York and he was there, I'd visit him at his house or in Paris. And, you learn so much from somebody like Rudolf, just the journey that he's made, and I was always impressed that he worked with Martha Graham. He worked with Paul Taylor. He made the effort to go to these people to expand his horizon as a dancer, which we didn't do that in the Royal Ballet. We were a little bit more insular. So, Rudolf taught me that there's a whole world of dance outside of London, yes. Outside of England, Rudolf, he danced everywhere in every style. So, he was a great, wasn't a teacher, but you just learned so much from him. He was more of a guru,
Yeah, sounds absolutely amazing. After 22 years with the Royal Ballet, you left the company and went on to become the artistic director of the Dutch National Ballet. Tell me about that time in your life.
I was the sort of union representative at the Royal Ballet, and I was having a hard time towards the end of my career. People, apart from an injury on my left ankle and things, I was considered the kind of bad apple because I was the union representative trying to raise the standards for ballet dancers, not only in the Royal Ballet, but the whole of England. which we managed to do with the help of Sir Donald Albury of Albury Theatres. But I was approached by Dutch National Ballet because they'd been, when Rudy van Danzig resigned as artistic director, they did a year and a half long search to find somebody. And they, well, long story short, they couldn't agree on who the final person should be. So somebody suggested me because I had danced with in the Netherlands and I knew Rudy very well. And I had my own company every summer. I would started with 2 people, ended up with 25. So I had experience of running a company and experience of labor relations, and I choreographed Frankenstein for Covent Garden and Beauty and the Beast. And I went over with no expectations, and I met, and they offered me the position. And so, you know, my time was finished at Covent Garden. So I went and I spent 15 years. I was at that stage in my career where it was getting more difficult to dance the main principal roles. And I just turned 40, and so they offered me the job, and I, you know, because I knew Rudy van Danzig very well, and the company was rather large. It was like 91 dancers. I think at the time the Royal Ballet was 75. So it was a big classical dance company, and you know, I jumped at the chance, and I spent you know, a lot of nice times there. You know, in the end, I had problems with the chairman of the board and things like that, but that sort of comes with the job of being a director, you know, no matter where you are. But, you know, I'm very proud of what we did when I was there. You know, the first year I was there, the company was doing Peter Wright's Sleeping Beauty. And my main goal was to make the company as well, better than the Royal Ballet. That was my aim.
That's quite the aim, isn't it?
You know, it was a fabulous company. I tried to make it, to really strengthen the ranks and to pass on what I had learned from Kenneth and from people. And you know, I tried to. It had the biggest balancing repertory outside of New York City Ballet, which was, you know, I always loved balancing. So there was that. They had, you know, all the works from Rudy van Danzig and Hans van Manen and Thor van Schaik, which people outside of Holland, you know, what Germany I know, but in England, people hardly knew the Dutch choreographers. Rudy did a piece for the Royal Ballet when I was there, Rudy van Danzig, and Hans van Manen, of course, created 4 Schumann pieces on Anthony Dowell, Jennifer Penny, Leslie Collier, and myself. But that was all they knew. So the Dutch National Ballet had huge credentials, but was not that well known. So my idea was to make it, you know, put it on the same level as the Royal Ballet in terms of recognition, you know, Bolshoi, Kirov, you know, and I'm pleased to say, you know, I was the 3rd director. It was Sonia Gaskell, Rudy van Danzig, myself, and now Ted Branson. So it's had 4 directors in its time, and I must say, Dutch National Ballet is one of the very top companies in the world. And you know, I played my part in that. So you know, I was very pleased.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the top companies of the world. They are one of my favorite ballet companies in the world. I think they're absolutely exceptional. And after your 14 years there, then you moved back home and went to the English National Ballet. Tell me about that transition.
Yes, the company, well, it's had so many directors, the English National Ballet, but the director before me was Matt Skoog, and I think the one before that was Derek Dean. And not many directors last long. I think Beryl was the only one that kind of survived. But I applied for the job, and they liked it. They saw what I had done at Dutch National, so I tried to apply the same thing and tried to have the same philosophy that English National Ballet should have the same recognition as the Royal Ballet.
Absolutely.
Because, it's got fantastic repertory, fantastic dancers. There was only 64 dancers in the company when I took over, and I reduced that down because we were the company was in terrible debt. But in the years that I was there, managed to put the company in the black, have a working fund for doing new full evening ballets every 2 years, and took it into the black for, and I must say, with the help of the dancers working extremely hard, because when you reduce the size of a company, it puts a stress on all of the dancers. So, but
of course, it's a touring company, so they're working so hard in any case.
Oh yeah, yes. I mean, it's a lot harder not to have a home theater and to be on tour all the time. In some ways it's fantastic because it gives you more opportunities for people to do things, but everybody is working twice as hard, and people are dancing with injuries, and you're putting on a ballet and you're having to find ways of putting on a full-length ballet with 15 people missing.
My goodness.
You're away from your home, and when you come back to London, you don't have your own home theater. That's something I tried very hard to see if we could move into the Colosseum along with the English National Opera. Not a new idea. I know Peter Schaufetz had the same idea, but never seemed to happen, which is a shame. But I had the same sort of experience at English National Ballet, that working with the dancers. Some dancers didn't like it because it was harder work than they were used to, and other dancers loved it. So, but I think in my time that the company did a lot of great things. I tried to encourage younger choreographers. I brought David Dawson in to do a piece, and long time ago we did our all-female choreographers evening. Happily, Jenna Lee is still choreographing things, and I've always been interested in trying to develop choreographers.
And you had also, I think you did an earlier version or an internal version of the emerging dancer that the company still does. Is that right?
Well, yeah, we created that, yes.
Yes, you created many a project while you were at the company that have been taken forward, which is fantastic.
To give trying to give the company a bigger profile. So emerging dancer, my first ballet, Dance for Parkinson's, so all of those things highlighted the work that the company was doing, and gave it a much higher public profile. So I'm glad they're still going, and getting better and better all the time.
Absolutely. And as a choreographer for the company as well, tell me about the works that you created while you were with the English National Ballet.
Well, when I joined, my contract said I wasn't allowed to choreograph.
Really? Well, that's interesting, considering you were already a choreographer at the time.
I know. Well, that was the contract. So, they at their convenience they changed that. But of course, the Nutcracker originally was going to be the version that Tor van Schaik and I created in Holland, and at the very last minute, I had Tor over. At the very last minute, they said they didn't want to do. They wanted me to do it all because the production that Tor and I did was too big and it was too expensive and blah blah blah. But it caused a lot of problems because all of a sudden I had to put on a Nutcracker in a very short space of time. And of course, I'm very proud of the one that Tor and I did because I think it's a pretty special one. So I did that. I created a piece that we did at Festival Hall. And what was that called? I keep calling it. To the Rocket leader of Mahler's Rocket leader in Amsterdam. I did the Rite of Spring, and I did a couple of other pieces. I choreographed more in Amsterdam.
But looking back at your time with the English National, with all these programs you developed and young choreographers that you have or had helped, to create their new works and to help get their sort of first opportunities within their careers that have gone on to become very, very esteemed and well-established choreographers today. When you look back over your time with the English National Ballet, what stands out to you as something that is really memorable for you, something that is really special for you?
It's interesting you talk about the choreographers because I was very much focused on that at the beginning in Dutch National. So David Dawson I gave him his first opportunity. Christoph Pastor, who now runs the Polish National Ballet. Ted Branson, of course. Annabelle Lopez, her first piece for me in the workshop. And I tried to carry that on. I mean, Jenna Lee, Stina, I can never pronounce her last name.
Well, she's one of her pieces is being performed by the English National Ballet in their reunion.
Stina Quatbar, I always tried to make it the space available. I mean, we used to do in Dutch National Ballet much more because we had our own theater and our own space. So we would do 3, if not 4 workshops a year. Whereas English National Ballet, much to my regret, we had much less time. We only had the big studio at J Muse, and we were touring the rest of the time. So had much less success in helping young choreographers come forward.
But having said that, I don't think that what you have done and what you did achieve can be understated. And as you mentioned, the company didn't have a home, and they've just moved into their new home in East London. And no doubt that will help. It will change the company as they have one unifying building that they can be to grow in and to flourish in.
I haven't been there. I mean, I understand it has its own theater, small space, but the big thing is to have your own theater. That's even if it's when it started out with Ninette and Lillian Bayliss, going to the Saddle as well. So that was, you've got to have a home that you perform at. And I'm sure the new studios, are fantastic. They've got much more space, a lot more studios, certainly more opportunities to do things. But it's still not a theater. And I think all the companies that I see that seem to thrive, not that ENB is not thriving, but they're all associated with the theater.
Something that gives them a grounded stage, somewhere where their audience know that this is their theatre home.
Yeah, and it's great to have modern facilities. I'm sure that makes gives you more opportunities, and there'll certainly be more opportunities somewhere like that to do more encouragement of young choreographers and new works and things. So hopefully that will work out.
So now, as we sit at home, waiting for dance to return or seeing it just starting to return, and what are you looking forward to in this moment? You've got the premiere that's just occurred of the New English Ballet's Theatre's Remembrance. What else are you sort of looking forward to during this time?
We were going to be doing my Jeu, New English Ballet Theatre, at the Linbury, but that hopefully will happen sometime in the future. It depends on what happens with the Royal Ballet. In the meantime, I'm working with New English Ballet Theatre on a project to do in outdoor arenas for next year, the end of next year. Almost pop shows, That's something that I'm, actively discussing at the moment to see if we can make it happen. And apart from that, because it's difficult to travel, it's very difficult to go and see. I've got my nutcrackers in Japan and Helsinki and Warsaw and Budapest. But I can't really go because you need to quarantine for 2 weeks before I go. So I'm leaving all of that in the very capable hands of all of the companies.
And how does that feel for you? Just sort of, leaving it to fly on its own, I guess, or to soar.
Because the companies do them every year. I'm pretty confident with the ballet masters and the staff that things don't get lost and changed. So I'm sort of okay with it. I always ask if they could send a video just so I can have a look, but that's okay. And I'm happy that English National Ballet is going to be doing a version of the Nutcracker this Christmas.
Yeah, very excited by that.
Well, it's going to be, I think it's good to keep going, keep trying. Obviously, it's not going to make money like the normal one does, but it's good that they're going to make the effort to bring live dance to the theater. I was talking to the director, and there's a bubble here and a bubble there, and then there's a double bubble, and then a boil and trouble bubble, and a
one-way systems and staggered studio times and split company classes.
So hopefully the dance-going public will feel confident enough to go and see the performances. And as you say, everybody's so used to video now. All my friends who are teachers were teaching on Zoom and doing things on TikTok, and the same as the New English Ballet Theatre putting out. Luckily, we filmed it, so we're able to put it out, which is great. Because, small companies like that don't have a theater with cameras set up, it's a very expensive proposition to make a television broadcast. Where, again, if you have your own theater like the Royal Ballet, they've got all, the cameras are there, it's all hooked up, and it's makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they've just had their live performance, which went out to live. People paid, and a lot of people watched it from around the world, which is this is a new thing. Having audiences pay to watch online. It's great.
Well, I mean, during the first lockdown, it was all free, so you wonder how many people want to pay in the end.
This is true.
Savannah, when I joined the Royal Ballet, we used to tour. Can you believe it? We used to go on tours all around England. We'd go to Liverpool and Manchester and Nottingham, and I guess it's one of the consequences of just being able to do a live stream, that people don't get to see the dancers up close,
And there's nothing like seeing dance live, really. I mean, it's great to have it online.
It's a dilemma. It's a big dilemma because, we always had discussions about what about the taxpayer in Birmingham who's paying for the Royal Ballet but could never afford to go and see them, and we don't go, the company doesn't go to Birmingham or Nottingham or Leeds anymore. And then you're up there thinking, well, what am I spending the money for? So it's always, this whole subsidy thing. And maybe the way around it is, people getting more modern. You have a look at your 74-inch screen and go, well, this is just as good. I don't know.
For those who have their 74-inch screens, they are very popular these days, but it's not quite the same. I think I might need one of those for all of this online dance that is coming our way. But, as we've looked to the future, you mentioned you joined the Royal Ballet back in 1969. Yeah. Many a year ago, and you've had this incredible career as a acclaimed dancer with one of the top companies, working with the ballet greats and the iconic choreographers, and then you have led two of the most exceptional companies in the world, Dutch and the English, and now creating works for other companies and continuing to. What about your legacy? What? Not just, yes, you give and have given and will continue to create new ballet works. But what does the legacy feel like for you? What's important to you?
Well, you're soon forgotten unless there's videos of you. I mean, people, or unless there's, you end up at the status of Nijinsky or Pavlova, where there's hardly any. Nureyev has so much film of him, so people can still sort of see. So there's some films of me, but most young dancers will never. Maybe they'll have seen me on YouTube doing. One of the nice things I did with Fred was the Voices of Spring for Deflator Mouse. So that. Every so often, that pops up when somebody says, "Just thought I'd put this up to cheer you up,"
Oh, that's lovely.
I've made quite a few ballets. I made a lot of ballets in Italy for Carlo Fracci, and less in England. Men, Why Men I did for ENB, and I've recreated other things. So in Japan, I've got the Nutcracker and the Sleeping Beauty. So when I go to Japan, because it's sort of current, people go, "Oh, Mr. Eagling," but the legacy. Funny enough, if you go back to New York and you go into the Met, there's still people there with their binders, and they go, and you go in 20 years later and they go, "Oh, Mr. Eagling, can you sign this photo for me?" You know, it's like,
That's so nice. And well deserved, of course. My goodness.
yeah, you know, it's difficult to know how you will be remembered. You know, I think I'm comfortable with how I worked, certainly as a director, making the companies I worked with better than better better than when I joined them. You know, and with a work ethic that sort of carried on. As a dancer, you know, I enjoyed my time dancing much more than I did being a director.
Oh, really?
Because it's just you. Oh yeah, because you only have to worry about you. And you know, when you're a director, you're waiting for people to step up to the plate. Uh, as a choreographer, you're more creative than being a dancer. But as a dancer, you have a creativity of the actor and the role. But you know, the most joyous times were doing a fabulous performance.
And having
You
the
know,
audience responding to that, or just being in that performance.
yeah, yeah. There was nothing nicer than, you know, finishing a show and feeling you've done a good job and walking out in front of the curtain and taking a bow and feeling the warmth from an audience who really appreciated what you did. That's because I'm sort of more of a physical person, I guess. Than
I was I think I mentioned this to you before, but I was doing a little bit of a YouTube, and I was watching a scene from Romeo and Juliet, the balcony pas de deux, which you did with Alessandra Ferri. Which is on YouTube, and for all listeners, go and have a look at this because it's so beautiful. And I can just imagine at the end of this particular performance, which was in 1984, that you must have had a wonderful response from the audience when you were taking your curtain calls, because it was so beautiful to watch. Even now, it was just stunning.
Well, you know, we recorded that in front of a television audience, so it wasn't a proper audience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it wasn't. It was. They filmed us live, but the music was recorded by the orchestra, and then they filmed it live on the stage. But because in the cameras in those days they had to put special lights and things, so there was like half an audience there. But they did a good job of making it look like it was.
Yeah, they did. Quite different from today, where the theatres are set up for these live relays and these live performance recordings, which are amazing to be able to capture, but quite different in the day.
One of the other things that was great fun is the first night of Frankenstein at the Opera House, because that was such a surprise that a success it was because I was always worried about. I said to Vangelis, I said, we've got to blow the audience away, and that first night of Frankenstein was very special. Very special party afterwards as well, you know.
So. All the dancers backstage or at the bar later.
Oh no, we all went to Vangelis's flat, you know, and it was like a who's who of, I had so many friends, and the Emmanuels had done the costumes, and Vangelis, and so we had Ridley Scott and Boy George, and it was absolutely. Even Lionel Blair's sister was there. What a nice lady she was.
Quite the party.
That was my choreographic special time.
Wow, so many special times, Wayne. I think we could sit here for hours and cataloguing all of these incredible experiences that you have had throughout this.
Savannah, let's do part 2.
Yes, I have to do part 2. My goodness, I need to hear about these parties. It sounds absolutely amazing. So then
Yeah.
my final question will be for today's part one, particularly in this challenging time, what advice would you give to dancers who are going through this period? Because you've been the artistic director and you've worked with so many different types of dancers and working with dancers from the New English Ballet Theatre who are quite young, as you mentioned, and perhaps having their first job, or many dancers whose jobs are no longer there. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I'd say to all the dancers in big established companies, be very thankful that you're not freelance. Be very thankful that, you've been given the opportunity to be furloughed and still have a job, and and think of all your colleagues who are not in that position, and just stay strong and really just wait it out until it there's not much you can do unless everybody works together to get over this virus, and even the experts don't agree on how it's going to happen, and I just take each day as it comes, but do think of your colleagues. I that's something, being freelance myself, you really see the more established companies, they're a very privileged position to be in this difficult time, and I'm not just talking, not just the arts, but in, everybody in the entertainment section, the people who work in the bars and,
Absolutely.
the ticket, they're having a absolutely horrible time. And if you're lucky enough to be a dancer in a big established company and you're able to go and do class in the studio, just say thank you.
Absolutely. That's wonderful words. Thank you so much for part one, Wayne. I really appreciate it. And I just want to do a shout out again, just because I want people to see Remembrance by the New English Ballet Theatre, which, as I mentioned, is available on YouTube. So New English Ballet Theatre's YouTube. So just go and Google that on YouTube. And it's available until the 15th of December. And check out the New English Ballet Theatre's Instagram, and there'll be details there as well. Thank you so much.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got some incredible interviews coming up with principal ballerinas and renowned choreographers. We love dance and ballet, and we hope you'll love us. Join us on Facebook and Twitter.